You are listening to the Bob and Kevin Show with Bob Baty-Barr
and Kevin Giszewski. Each week we cover relevant tech and social issues related to technology.
Our website is bobandkevin.show,
and our episodes can be found virtually on any podcast network.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Just search for Bob and Kevin Show.
And, oh, look at that. Your picture's right there. We did all right. Hey, everybody listening and watching. This is Bob from the Bob and Kevin Show. And that guy over there on the other side of the screen, I have no idea which direction it is. That's my good friend and co-host.
Kevin?
Kevin, I see you are actually wearing a very on-brand shirt for today's conversation, a NASA shirt.
That's right. So for the listeners only, I'm wearing a custom-made NASA shirt. Even put a flag over here. That's right.
I was going to ask if that was a Scribbler original.
It is, but it's a one-of-a-kind. I usually make shirts and whatnot just for me. So I don't really sell shirts. I sell a lot of designs, but the shirts themselves, I don't sell.
So do you ever anticipate that you will be selling the shirts?
I don't, because I've done a lot of screen printing over the last year or so, and I've done it the traditional emulsion method. I've done it with some sort of like 1 minute expose out in the sunlight methods, and I've used vinyl, and they all have their pros and cons. The emulsion method is absolutely finicky and absolutely messy and expensive, so there's one demerit against that. The the method that you use, it's like a sheet. It's like an 8 by 10 sheet of photosensitive paper. So you put a transparency on it, you take it out to sunlight for a minute, and it actually works way better than the emulsion method. But it's not stretched on the screen, so therefore it's really difficult then when you put it on the shirt to apply your ink. And then there's vinyl, which looks really good, except until you realize it's vinyl, and then you're like, oh, it's vinyl.
Yeah.
So
I get those concerns. Totally get those. Well, we're not actually here today to talk about custom screen printing. We're actually here to talk about the buzz around the globe, or at least in Kevin and I's world for the most part, that there's been some legislation that was kind of, I wouldn't say snuck into one of the recent COVID relief packages, but this was back when we had Dear Leader, President DJT. He actually signed into some legislation for COVID-19 relief, but the kicker, that COVID relief package had a little clause in it about the United States government having 180 days to turn over everything that they know about extraterrestrial life, unidentified flying objects, and whatever other, what is it, UAPs, or what is the other acronym?
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yeah, UAP. I got that right.
Yes. So, can I ask a question?
You most certainly may.
They had 6 months to turn it over. To who?
I think they have... Oh, that's a really good question. I'm assuming it's actually 6 months to declassify it. So I think once it's declassified, it can be FOIA'd, correct?
FOIA, Bob's amazing acronym usage, is the Freedom of Information Act usage, meaning that Bob and Kevin could possibly submit our own FOIA request to the government and say, hey, are these aliens real? Tell us what you know, right?
Yes, but we're probably going to let good friends at organizations like Vice or other professional reporting organizations collect that information. And you better damn well bet come June or late May, whenever that 180 days passes and this information starts coming out, the Bob and Kevin Show will be talking about aliens again. So,
well,
that's
aren't we talking about aliens today too?
Yes, but we'll be talking about them again in 6 months for sure when this information comes out.
Nice.
So this legislation was kind of the genesis of us wanting to discuss this topic again today. And so we started doing some research. And it just so happens that it's not only the Bob and Kevin Show that are interested in alien technology and all things space related. Good friend of the show, Joe Rogan, often has guests on to
He never calls me back, though.
Yeah, that might be a little bit of a stretch. Him and Elon are pretty cold about getting back to us. But anyway, Joe obviously is excited about some of this upcoming release of information and has kind of ramped up some guests on his own. And two that he had on in December, right around the time where this legislation was being announced. He had on Travis Walton. And Kevin, if you want to go ahead and help everybody out, let everybody know who Travis is and how his claim to fame.
So Travis Walton is the protagonist, or maybe one of the main characters of the movie Fire in the Sky, which was circa 1993. Now, I saw that probably not in the theater. I saw it somehow, some way back in the day, and I thought it was one of the most compelling, like, alien abduction movies that's been dramatized. And the story takes place in 1975. Travis gets abducted, blah blah blah, things happen, and then he comes back, and then basically they're like, where have you been for 5 days? So that's Travis.
But he had no idea that it was 5 days. He thought that he got knocked out in the woods, and when he came to, his buddies ran. And it turns out that it was actually a big lag. 5-day lag, 5 days of missing time. One of the things I found interesting about his story, his interview with Joe, is that apparently that wasn't a one-off instance for him with his contact with the quote-unquote extraterrestrial. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. So of course, Joe even talked about, I can be fooled. You can be fooled. I've been fooled before. Bob Lazar's been here. Didn't really fool me, or at least didn't make me think I'm, being fooled. So he was kind of, you could tell, I think, during the podcast, he was trying to do some sort of, is this guy full of shit or not? Because, and I don't know if you noticed this, he would ask for details, exactly what I would do. So I thought Joe did a good idea, which is, how many eyes did they have? What were they? What was he wearing? Like asking for very specific details. And either this guy is really good at handling these situations because maybe he's very practiced. I don't know. But he pretty much fired off, yeah, well, here's the answer and blah, blah, blah. So what do you think, Bob? Can I go right for it? Did he seem believable?
You can try to go right for it. I mean, did he seem believable? Yeah, one of the things that shocked me pretty early on, so listening and watching on Spotify, because Joe's exclusively on Spotify now, but he got them to do video, which is very interesting. I found myself questioning how old the guy was, how old Travis was, because he struck me as a much older gentleman in his presentation, in his speech patterns, in kind of the way he was retelling. And I looked it up, and he's only 63. So in the grand scheme of things, he's only 13 years older than I am. And he struck me as being much older, like even possibly a decade older. Now, could that be from a hard life of being interviewed constantly about this experience? I don't know. But one of the things that Joe commented on in relation to Travis and in relation to Bob Lazar is the consistency of the retelling. Now, we could go down a psychological rabbit hole pretty quickly. If you tell the same story enough times, you're going to actually convince yourself that it's true.
Yeah, so, almost like an election. Right. Yeah.
It all comes back to that.
It does. So, I actually didn't know this was the name of the person from the movie, but I thought it was a great movie. He did say that some of the things in there are definitely like, oh no, that didn't happen. Blah, blah, blah. This it was like this, but how else were they supposed to convey, that? So, they took some creative, license on that. And he did say they're considering making a remake of that movie, which I thought was like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that must have been when I totally got distracted by that work thing. Josh, feel free to drop in the disclaimer right there. Oh, speaking of Josh, before we get too far into things, should we do a live read?
Yeah, I do think we should, and so I will go ahead and take it this week. So imagine you're just a couple of people, and you're like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could just talk and do the podcast and not have to worry about anything that you got to do afterwards or whatnot. Maybe upload it later, stuff like that, because who's got time to like take separate audio feeds from across 1,000 miles apart, put them together, drop in some edits here and there, not for content, but for like show music and things like that. Who's got time for that? Well, I'll tell you who. Josh Baty-Barr does. And
not us.
Not us. Definitely. In fact, we hired Josh to do this for us because he owns Baty-Barr Media, and it's an online editing production company that specializes in music, podcast production, and video services for creators of all backgrounds. They have efficient and reliable services that will save you time, stress, and any product. And let me tell you, I definitely like not having to do anything but read this and then give it to him when we're done. And how can you take part of this? Well, in the biz, we call it a call to action. This is what we want you to do.
Look at you, sounding like a goddamn professional.
I know. It's getting scary. So, Baty-Barr Media is willing to give you, the listener, that's right, the one who's listening right now, 10% discount on any new project for our listeners. If you go to this URL, fill out a form, you can get in on it. It's www.baty-barr.media/BK show. I'm going to say that one more time. www.baty, that's BATY, -bar, BARR.media/BK show to claim your discount. And we would actually really appreciate you patronizing Josh, because when you support our sponsors, you are supporting the Bob and Kevin show. All right,
but
Bob,
Kevin, I feel like there's listeners out there saying, but I'm not a podcaster. Well, first of all, anybody can be a podcaster. But second of all, Josh can do your, wedding video, once weddings are a thing again, but he can also help you live stream said socially distanced affair. He can edit a mixtape, help you edit a mixtape for a long distance lover, if you will. His skills are unlimited. If it's audio, video, technology related, he's your guy. So we can move on from the live read and get back to the alien content. So I'm on the fence, as with all of, I'm not going to state for the record whether he's believable or not. That's related to Travis. I do tend to agree with the fact that he was very consistent in his telling. I thought it was very interesting how he did point out things in Fire in the Sky that were the dramatized things that he didn't necessarily, they weren't true. He did, as you mentioned, he had trouble breathing inside the craft. I think in the movie they represented that by him having some kind of membrane covering his, breathing area. And he said that wasn't the case. But, in a live action movie, someone just sitting there gasping for air, that might be hard for the user to, jump into that. So I thought it was interesting the way he started mentioning, it was a standard saucer configuration ship, that it wasn't necessarily gigantic in size. Some of those features, I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know. How about you?
So,
what are your thoughts?
So if I want to compare and contrast him a little bit with Bob Lazar, because they're kind of regarded as, kind of similar, both have some sort of firsthand account of some extraordinary things. And if Carl Sagan were a panelist here, he would say, well, Bob and Kevin, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so right now, I don't know that there's a ton of evidence from Travis other than a really good story. Now, he did go through with Joe and this and this and this, but, as the skeptics will point out, it's all like, well, you could have been just hiding. You could have been here. What is it that you have to back up your story? Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, because maybe aliens are like, hey guys, all we got to do is just make him, let's do his laundry, give him a shower, and then we'll put him back in the middle of town, and then people won't believe him. That's super possible. I did like one thing he did bring up, but it's a kind of a common thing in the UFO community. It's like, if you see an alien ship, it's not by chance. Let's say we see it's not like the alien's like, oh dang it, they saw us, shucks. No, if you can do interstellar travel, you're deliberately either not caring if you get seen or you want to be seen. And I laugh every time people are like, look at the lights in the sky. Brake lights and headlights, those are for cars and planes. I don't think there's any UFO laws that say, hey, you
Right.
got to have some flight, port and starboard lights there going on. So again, lights in the sky is kind of like, But was he believable? Oof. I'm trying to separate the fact that I really like the movie from the person who claims to have it happen to them. Alien abduction just seems like part of me's like, well, why would aliens want anything to do with us? Have you not seen humans for 5 minutes?
Well,
I don't know.
And another thing though, like even partway through the episode, Joe had referred to it as an abduction, and kind of Travis, halted him a little bit, and he's like, I don't know if I would necessarily consider this an abduction as like an ambulance run. So like when he came up on the craft, he ended up getting too close to it, and he doesn't think that he was attacked. He thinks that because of his proximity to the energy source, he got zapped, and that the little green men, who weren't little green men, came out basically to help him. So I thought that was a very interesting take on it. It's just so funny because there are just so many things that keep clicking in my head that I can't necessarily make sense of. The fact that there's conventions that these guys go to all the time, or a lecture circuit that they all go to. And so, he gets asked these questions. He presents this information. He tells the story a million times over. So he's going to get really good at it. But do you think that it's like to stand out in the crowd? It's like they didn't kidnap me to stick probes in my anus. They actually helped save me. Is he trying to come up with a unique story? I don't know.
So the takeaway is the aliens are really worried about legal liability. The lawyers have warned them that if you accidentally zap any humans, you better take care of them. Got it.
Well, he addressed that because he said on the circuit, at these speaking engagements, where he's been in the same place where Bob Lazar is, but they've never really sought each other out, which I thought that was pretty interesting as well. But he said, conspiracy theorists, which also cracked me up, that he was mentioning conspiracy theorists would come up to him and say, they take us and they do experiments on us and they destroy the bodies. And he's like, well, tell me who that happened to. And the guy would say, well, this is a guy that's out on the circuit telling these stories. And like, but is he a victim? Tell me a victim name, and that it's so well packaged. It makes me skeptical.
Well, yeah. The thing is with people like this, there are these conventions, and it reminds me of the flat Earth people, or your flat Earth and your ability to do this, and you make money on your thing. So when people like this write a movie, or I'm sure he got money for the movie. I'm sure he'll get money for the remake. He's written a book. He goes to the conference. It pays to be this guy. And I don't know about you. If I get abducted or ambulanced by an alien, I am scarred for life. And I'm just like, a nervous wreck. Maybe that's just me. But this guy just like, yeah, it happened. No big deal. Hey, who's going to win a Super Bowl? It's like, wait, what? You just can't. How do you be so cold to this idea?
Well, I think, the repetition, the distance, and, the time away from the event. I'm sure he's very polished, which again gives me skepticism. But, if we can bleed the two kind of like the people together in the topics, the other episode that we watched, Ari, how do you pronounce his last name?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot.
Oh, wait, is it Avi? It's Avi, right?
Yeah, he's Israeli, so it's very much one of those kind of names.
Labor, Loeb, I don't know.
Loeb,
well, anyway,
Avi Loeb. Yeah.
Avi Loeb. So when Joe was talking to Avi, so you have the firsthand experience of the person who had the alien encounter, and then you have someone approaching it from the theoretical side of things, and it's like he kept bringing up over and over again that we can't limit ourselves from what our current imagination allows us to view as reality. So it becomes really hard to to put this on, to say who are we to say that he's not being 100% authentic? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally get it. But it's human nature for us to go, hey, is this guy bullshitting or what? I mean, it's just that's just a natural human reaction there to be like, I don't know. How is it this person is only one, blah, blah. So I know I sound like a skeptic here. I totally want aliens to be real. I
100%.
totally do. I'm just not convinced, though, that... Well, here's the problem for me. Have you ever had a dream that you thought was so real that you're like, did that really happen, or was that a dream? I don't know if you've ever had. I have.
Not in a very long time, which makes me sad.
And, with certain consumable things, those things are much more possible. Not saying that, they were doing it, because there was, 5 or 7 of them. There was a group of them. You can't have a same dream together, right? So there's that. But you can definitely conspire with people. And be like, all right, here's our thing. They were awarded, it looks like $5,000 according to Wikipedia for having the best UFO story of the year. In around that time. So
yeah, but a 30-year conspiracy. I get it that they exist, but that just seems like an awfully long game for.
Well, I hate to bring it back to modern day, but obviously pushing a big enough lie can have real world consequences, and
it does. But we're talking about the scope of just a handful of time. Oh, okay, so you've got bigger than election. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the original big lie, thank you, Your Honor. The original big lie resulted in a lot of people dying in Europe in the mid 40s, or early to mid 1940s. So, I think the power of, and then the flat earthers is my also thing. It's one of those things, I can convince you because you can't convince yourself that it's not true. It's one of those, using people's own mind against themselves. I can say something, and I know if I'm smart enough, and I'm thinking of the flat earth guy, and I can't remember his name for the life of me, thank God.
Yes, thank God.
If I... Thank God I can't remember your name.
Thank the flat earth.
Yes. I'm just, these people are less about is flat earth real or not, or globe. And they're more about, I just want to fuck with people. I just want to see how far I can take this. And once I know where the safe zone is, I just operate within that safe zone. And I know they can't refute me and whatnot. It's just like any other conspiracy. As long as you can't prove it or disprove it, that's good fodder for just bullshitting. And you can turn a lot of that bullshit into money. And I've been to some of these conferences. Yes, Kevin has been to some of these conferences. And these people just love to have they like to out crazy each other with their stories. And that's what part of me is going, yeah, I've been to these. And you know what? These conventions end up turning out to being, they're money-making ventures because everyone's selling UFO things like, swag and they have all these speakers. And I'm just like, are we all just like in fantasy land here? I mean, because I know I'm just like, I wish, but I know there's probably not aliens. Do y'all believe that too, or are y'all just crazy?
Does the capitalism aspect of it, should that take away from the potential validity of somebody's story? I guess.
Spoken like a true alien abduction guy.
Well, okay, so
that's what you would say.
So here's where it starts to get weird for me. So we're going to now blend a bunch of the different topics for today's show. Kind of, we're going to go through the potpourri part of it. So you've got Travis, you've got Bob Lazar. Travis spoke about couple different formations or configurations that he's seen because he's had multiple contacts, and that's a whole nother conversation we'll bring up in a couple minutes. But then Bob Lazar also talked about, the various configurations that he's witnessed. We've got the Tic Tac, we've got the pyramid, we've got the traditional saucer-esque kind of thing. We've got the solar sail thing that
We got the History Channel alien guy with the crazy hair. Everything's aliens. All right, keep going.
But so to jump ahead or to jump into another one of the topics, we have our Navy has applied for patents that starts to delve into propulsion things that Bob Lazar was talking about, that, talking about energy fields that Travis is talking about. So, like, are these people, the guy from the Navy, Dr.
I will take it from there, Bob.
Yes,
his name is
ahead.
Dr. Salvatore Pace or Pice. It's Pais. On Wikipedia, it says he is an American aerospace engineer and the inventor of the United States Air Force and inventor of the United. Wait, how can he be the inventor of the United States Air Force? Maybe he was an inventor for it. Okay, poor grammar,
Typo.
bad radio. Okay, so I'm gonna wing it. He's a guy allegedly that's got some patents for the U.S. government, but from what I can understand, we're not even sure if this guy is real. Is that what you kind of gleaned? Does anyone know if this person actually exists?
I believe that in one of the articles that we looked at from Vice, actually, let's new view for
Can I see a picture of what this man looks like? Is all I'm saying.
They do not have a picture. I'm actually, for Kevin's not seeing the live show, I'm actually scrolling the article that was on Vice. The patents are filed. And so Salvatore Pace, the man behind the patents and the War Zone. So apparently there's a company called the War Zone. Essentially, Pace is proclaiming to use properly spun electromagnetic fields. I mean, it's a pretty detailed article about what the technology entails. So I'm assuming that he's a real person.
Well, Bob, who invented Bitcoin?
Shitori, I don't know.
Satoshi.
Satoshi, yeah.
Satoshi something. Nakamura. Anyway, he doesn't exist either because that's a pen name, right?
But they interviewed Pace, and he, they have a quote, continued to toot his own plasma horn. All right. Do realize that my work culminates in the enablement of the Pace effect. So he's got an effect named after himself, which is interesting because that kind of goes back to what Avi was talking about, in the different disciplines of science, where some scientists are just all about, giving themselves accolades and naming theoretical things after themselves. So
did you find anything that actually described what the Pace effect was? Because I couldn't actually find what is the Pace effect, other than in the Wikipedia article says it could not be proven. I'm like, okay, but what was it?
It's similar to what Lazar was talking about with the basically creating the void in front. If you remember that episode, the propulsion that they were studying, that basically it was creating a void in front of the object that was sucking the object forward continually at an incredibly high rate.
Well, that's called a warp drive, right?
Well, right, but I think that's the basis of the Pace effect is an electromagnetic radiation in a local vacuum energy state.
Let's assume for a minute he does exist. You can go on Google Patent right now and look up US 1014453 Bravo 2 and find an awarded patent to the inventor Salvatore Cesar Pace, which was.
Can you apply for a patent if you're not a real person?
I don't know. I can do a lot apparently if you're not a real person. Apparently I can have a whole cryptocurrency, and whatnot. So apparently, right? Anyway, so
there's mathematical equations.
It's attributed
to
him.
Must be legit.
It's attributed to him. So what is this patent? So that was a patent number, by the way. A craft using inertial mass reduction device comprises of an inner resonant cavity wall, an outer resonant cavity wall, and microwave emitters. Wow, this sounds like something totally ripped from a sci-fi show. They have a picture of it, and what it basically is, and I was trying to describe it to one of my kids, and it's basically an underwater submarine that can fly to space. I'm like, does that cover everything, right?
Well, but think about it, though. In some of the when the Tic Tac videos were coming out earlier last year, and they were declassifying some of that. They were talking about the experiences of the Air Force guys that were out off the coast of San Diego, right? Or somewhere out off the coast of California.
That's right.
And they were seeing ships that were airborne and then submerged, and or submerged and then airborne. So, I mean, this all like really, it starts to click together for me.
Scary enough, it does for me too. So the timeline of this patent, so the Navy was awarded this patent through this inventor. It was initially filed in 2016, and then it was granted in 2018, and it is due to expire in the year 2036. So the thing is, with a patent, you don't actually have to have a working prototype of it. But you do have to withstand some sort of, rigor and whatnot. And there's a lot of stuff going on here and there. I'm not going to even begin to try to read any of this. If you want to go check it out, check it out.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Basically, what they're saying here is, we not saying we found a UFO, but we're going to make one based on apparently one. And it's going to be really cool. Just you wait and see. Nuclear bombs ain't gonna have shit on this. This is just gonna be the cat's meow, right?
Yeah, and what were they saying that this technology that he's proclaiming will engineer the fabric of reality? So, and it just all ties in so closely to what Lazar's been studying. Now, could this be a delusional person in the military that patented something that he hopes to make one day? I don't know. But it sounds an awful lot like Lazar's stuff.
I don't know if you've seen this one. He's got a second patent with the Navy, and it is a plasma compression fusion drive. Holy crap. There's some...
Well, yeah, that's the not to toot his own plasma horn. That's exactly what that was in reference to.
So this one is for our listeners, US 201-902-957-33 Alpha 1 is your patent number. And this one is still patent pending. So if they create this plasma compression fusion drive, it'll have patent pending on the side rather than patented, because this one is not yet approved. But this one here has something to do with fusion energy, bunch of strong, long, big words in there. Wow, what did I just describe? Anyway, moving on. Plasma compression fusion device, and it's all in patent terms and drawings and things like that. So
do you know what these drawings remind me of? It's so funny.
What?
These drawings remind me of the outside-in algorithm, or the inside-out algorithm from Silicon Valley. Remember their compression algorithm? And they were doing the whole...
Yes. The phallic symbols coming together.
But look at figure 2.
So now I know why my description of this device sounded pretty awkward. Wow. So Salvatore Pace, if that's how we say his name, may or may not exist. Bob, I'm guessing you think he does. I'm not so convinced. I'm thinking this is like a pseudo, like, hey, we need somebody to be the inventor.
But so the inventor of Bitcoin might not be a real person, but Bitcoin still exists. So what if this patent is a pseudonym?
Nothing.
A nom de plume.
I mean, somebody obviously created Bitcoin, and they're just trying to put an indirection layer between themselves and Bitcoin. Same thing here. I think maybe this pseudonym is just an indirection layer. I don't know why you'd need one, but the interesting bits are, like you mentioned, yes, but from who? I mean, yeah, I guess you can't go interview him, right? You can't go interview the fake person. You can't interview the person who invented Bitcoin. So you kind of get a little bit of privacy there. Bob Lazar certainly doesn't have any privacy, but you know what? I'm not convinced that he doesn't like. He might like the whole UFO circuit himself. Yeah, for like Travis maybe. But it is interesting that it's from the Department of Navy, the same branch of military that had to do with the San Diego Tic-Tac, I almost said TikTok, Tic-Tac things. And it's also further interesting that apparently in 6 months, the government will tell us all they know. Do you really believe that, Bob? I don't.
Well, I know you don't. That's your role on the show. But part of me thinks that the only reason why that legislation ended up being, put in there and got approved is maybe all this stuff with these patents and the declassification of these videos. Maybe this is all they got. Maybe they're going to come out and say, man, we'd love to show you more. We'd love to declassify more, but actually it's all out there.
When I see a patent for a transporter system like on Star Trek, I'm just gonna be like, come on now. Are you just stretching here? Are you just like picking things off TV?
Do we know that there's not a patent out there for something similar? Because I guess you don't have to have it real to patent it, right?
I don't know what the patent process is. I know there is a process, and some things that have been awarded patents, you kind of scratch your head, like the mouse click, stuff like it's like, what? How's that patentable? And then other things are like they'll not give you a patent, and it's like, what? Why not? That seems obvious. Why wouldn't you get? I don't know the process, so who knows? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Maybe if you can just dream it up, you can apply for a patent. Maybe that's the whole game, because I know like big tech companies love to just have a portfolio of patents just in case we need to sue your ass. Hey, well, turns out we actually own that patent. Who would have thunk? We bought this other company over here and they patent that stupid shit. But now we can sue you. This is awesome.
As a total tangent and aside to what we're talking about, if you're listening to the show and you find any of this stuff interesting, Motherboard, which is the tech division of Vice, the Vice network of reporting and news, I guess. Motherboard, just story after story about, this type of alien technology and, UFO sightings and, what patents and things like that are out there. So it's a very interesting, it's one of my new favorite web sections for news now.
So I'm highly open to I'm hoping to learn some stuff about aliens. It's funny because when the whole pandemic thing started, everyone's like, oh man, those doomsday preppers not so crazy anymore, I don't want that. And then you kind of look at the homeschoolers, and I know homeschooling is not that like weird, but sometimes it is weird. You look at the homeschoolers, go, yeah, that wasn't a bad idea either. So maybe one day we'll be looking at these people like the former Blink-182 guitarist Tom DeLonge, and right now I'm looking at him going,
on the show before.
What are you thinking, man? Go play your guitar and rock out. But man, he gave all that up to chase aliens, and that's impressive. That's dedicated right there. Maybe after you have a bunch of money and royalties coming in, you can do those sorts of things. So maybe, Bob, I will make you that promise. If we get a bunch of Bob and Kevin show royalties coming in, maybe that's what I'll do too. Who knows?
Well, I think it's.
I'm going to work Monday, just so you know.
I think it's our responsibility if the show becomes what we hope it to be. We've got to go to these conventions. We've got to go to we've got to do the research. So that's kind of what I think. So can we spend a little time talking about Avi and his appearance? So yes, he was on Joe Rogan for a long format thing. He's obviously a very credible astronomer. Is that how he classifies himself? I think he is classified as an astronomer. Astrophysicist, I don't know, who knows. But he was also featured on CNN talking about the propulsion aspect of, man, I wish I could remember how to pronounce it.
I was going to see what you're going to say. Wuma or whatever it's called, right?
Oh, Wuma, yeah. Wumo.
Is it? I don't know.
Wumo.
That weird cigar-shaped,
yes.
Interestingly, another phallic-shaped item floating around our universe or solar system, right?
Yes, and I think that phrase is Hawaiian for traveler, I believe, something similar to that. But anyway, piece of thing, size of a football field, I think it's being referenced as, that is hurtling through space, and it was originally classified as a comet, yet it has no tail. And it is actually moving faster than other objects like comets. And so they're trying to figure out, since it kind of snuck up on us that we weren't able to actually observe it, So they're doing all these, I guess, theoretical calculations, investigations on how it's propelling itself through space. And the best thing that Avi's been able to come up with is it's like a solar sail. It's when light hits it on one side, it actually uses that as an energy source to propel it. Apparently it rotates at a very specific time. Like it rotates, does a revolution over the course of 8 hours, he referenced. So I don't know how repeatable that is, but they talk about how the reflective nature, they can see the light side versus the dark side and track that, just via high-powered light monitoring. So his theory is that, it's not from this world and it's propelling itself.
So allegedly, because it's moving so fast, it can't be a comet. Because comets and other things that are bound by our sun kind of have to travel within a certain speed limit. Otherwise, it breaks out, just like anything else. If Earth were spinning around sun too fast, we would no longer be spinning around the sun. We would be hurled out of the solar system. So that's kind of one kind of interesting thing that we think this is the first detected extrasolar object that has come in and just kind of hung out. As far as being a comet, not comet, a comet is, just an icy ball of rock and dust, right? So the tail points away from the sun because of the solar wind and whatnot. So the tail could actually be out in front of a comet, when it leaves the solar system. So
and comets are always evaporating. Like that's what contributes to the tail is the rapid evaporation, which also causes it to reduce in size, which this little object is not showing signs of doing, like a comet.
Yeah. So, and apparently it snuck up on us.
Because it's fast.
There's some interesting things about it, but it's kind of like, I don't know. It's the whole correlation causation thing. My wife was saying the other day, more politics here, business X. Ever since Joe Biden took over, which was like 2 weeks ago, business has just dropped off. I'm like, wait a second. You're saying because Joe Biden took over, now there's no business in that short amount of time. By the way, I also took a shit every day since then, and instead of at 2 o'clock, it was at 3 o'clock. Was that the reason the business was no longer getting business? Because I altered my shitting patterns?
Thanks.
No. Yeah, thanks, Joe. So what I'm getting at is you can't make too much of a decision based on too little data. There's just like no corroboration. Just because we see one thing, we can't back up. We can certainly speculate it as a comet, it's alien, it's whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's like one thing. It's like one data point. It's like, show me the graph. Well, how many data points you got? One.
It's interesting that you bring up the data points. Did you know that there was a similar object that was tracked after that? I think it was after that. Displaying similar characteristics and was actually being propelled by the reflection of light. But do you know what the most fascinating aspect about that piece of
I bet you
debris
can tell us.
Yes. That piece of debris was actually the rocket housing from something that we've already sent into space.
Oh,
displaying
from
very
like the
similar
Mercury
behavior.
era?
Yes. So it was a hollowed out tube, basically, light, aerodynamic-ish, but catching reflection from the sun and propelling it through its orbit pattern. Tumbling just in a very similar way. So there's 2 data points.
So you're saying
one of them is ours.
You're saying the rock is a spent rocket housing from an alien technology.
It could be. And that's one of the things that Avi kept going back to, is that a lot of his colleagues that speak out against him just won't make an allowance for such a concept because their reality is bound or is guardrailed by them not willing to apply their imagination.
Oh,
and he
gotcha.
also, like that episode it was intriguing to me because it was supposed to be about, evidence of outside life, all that good stuff, otherworldly life. And it actually was a pretty long discussion about how theoretical mathematicians and things like that, it's super cool for them to create theories and try to prove them out in the realm of not real. But when it comes to astronomy and astrophysics, one of the first complaints that are thrown up is that, well, that's not bound in any kind of reality. What reality is that tied to? So I thought that was a very
fun
interesting
fact.
Yes.
I believe it's pronounced Umamua, and
Umamua,
it means
thank you.
U means to reach out for, and Mua is for first in advance of, and it's Hawaiian, as you mentioned.
So it wasn't Traveler, so I was completely talking out my ass, and I apologize for that.
This is Wikipedia true, by the way, so who knows?
All right,
Probably.
so there's a chance that I could be right.
So I like to be skeptical about everything, but so to your point about not allowing to have these thoughts, man, I allow myself to have probably too many thoughts. It could be alien, it could be just a hunk of junk, it could be a space turd, it could be anything, as far as I'm concerned. And until you can prove it one way or the other, it lives in that little ambiguous zone of, yeah, we have your idea is just as good as mine, So that's a little disappointing that scientists have to say, no, it's a rock because why? Because I don't want to believe it's aliens because here's all the reasons. Yeah, I get it. But that's not evidence. That's like you want it to be this. What's the evidence say?
And one of his colleagues, actually, he quoted one of his colleagues of saying that he just wished it didn't even exist. And Avi's response to that was, well, why would you, part of what we're here to do is to learn about, and he was basically likening his colleague by saying he wished it didn't exist because then they don't have to try to explain it if it didn't exist, So that episode was very interesting to me in that it wasn't necessarily so much about aliens. I mean, they definitely touched upon, if they were scientists, or if the aliens coming to visit here were studying us, our best role would be to listen when they come, not to react and, launch the military right away and all that good stuff. So there was some interesting...
Which one do you think will happen though, Bob?
Oh, totally B. We will launch the military.
I've seen Independence Day. I know how this is going to end.
That's exactly what I was envisioning.
Another thing that's kind of like man's just oops, guess we should have thought of that, but we didn't think of that, is the fact that we emit so much radio waves from our planet, and it's got to look like a freaking bright ass Christmas tree to everybody else within what do you say? It was it's like 100. I don't know how many light years, but a lot of light years away.
100 million light years or something like that.
Yeah, he said that, but that doesn't make sense to me because we've only been shooting off electromagnetic stuff for 100 years. So where does the million come from?
Does it travel at the speed of light? Or maybe it's 100 light years. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he said 100 million. Maybe he didn't. We'll have to go back to the tapes. But no, light travels at, I don't know, the speed of light. And a radio wave is, a speed of light. So you can slow down light. You can't speed it up past the cosmic speed limit, but you can put it in a medium and refract it and all this fun stuff. So anyway, if you're 100 light years from us, which I think Proxima Centauri is within 100 light years of us, and if they were green dudes, be like, hey man, let's go fuck with the Earthers. They'd come over here and they'd be like, we got a roadmap. It's the one. It's the one that's lit up like a Christmas tree, dude. Let's go. Yeehaw! So let's go kidnap a few and touch them or something.
Yeah, they were laughing about that. If our goal was to listen first, we blew that 100 years ago, basically.
Yeah. And I think at this point, it's we're the deer, we're the prey, and they're the predators. If in fact that's the case, because they're hunting us now. If they got any sort of malintentions, if we taste like bacon, we're screwed, Bob. That's all I'm getting at.
I think we'll taste like chicken, but no. Joe even mentioned a couple times that the whole process of like on this planet, we track animals and we tag them and then we let them go. And then we come back and visit them again a little later, drop the net on them from the helicopter, tranquilize them, so he was kind of likening that maybe could be what, Travis was experiencing with his multiple contacts. It was also funny that Travis, like several times in the interview, was like, yeah, I'll talk to you a little bit more about that after. So like there are several things that he didn't want to bring fully to light, which I thought was pretty interesting as well.
Yes, and if you were out to make money, well played. Such a tease. There's more? I've got to know. I should go to the next UFO conference. He'll have a special room where I can get VIP access.
Yeah, at least he doesn't have a book coming out, but I guess he does go to those
He's already
shows.
got a book.
Right. He doesn't.
He's already got a book. Right. Anyway, I'm curious, just out of sheer curiosity, if you're abducted by aliens, what do you do as a day job? Do you sell insurance? Do you work in computer programming? Do you
well,
know what do you
he was
do?
a lumberjack.
Okay, you can't do that forever. So eventually, I don't know. What do you do when you're like an abduction guy and you go to all these conferences and whatnot? Do you ask for time off? Hey, I need to have next week off. Oh yeah, how come, Travis? Well, speaking of that, I got abducted by aliens conference. It's just kind of like a awkward conversation, isn't it?
I imagine between his book and the conferences and the movie royalties and probably paying for his story, probably didn't have to have a day job after that. I mean, I'm sure he gets paid to go to the conferences, right?
Thanks for falling into my trap.
Yeah, damn it, I knew it. God.
Because that's kind of my point. I feel like it's profitable to have a good storytelling element. If you're a good storyteller, it's worth money. And if you just know the rules of, well, you can't disprove it either. If that's how you respond to everything. Oh, you don't believe me? Well, you can't tell me I didn't do it, can you? And it's just like, and then there's just so many people are like, but I want to believe you. And then they're just like, I want to believe you so much. Here's $20 for the opportunity for you to just talk to me. That's the kind of stuff. It's like, I'm just not so sure. Here's what I'm getting at. I'd believe the lumberjack who's still a lumberjack who might have this story, who's like got drinking problems. That's the guy I want to believe versus the guy who's like, yeah, I'm the guy. Gives you the double, number one, thumbs up. Hey.
Well, I think back in the day, he was that guy. He was the guy that was still a lumberjack who tried to like still put his life back together, just like Lazar. I don't think they ran to the spotlight. I think that the spotlight kind of consumed them against their will. I mean, I'm totally projecting what.
Well, I'm just reading Wikipedia. They cashed in with it says within a few. What was it? A few days or months, they cashed in with the National Enquirer.
Well, yeah, he made it sound like the media was all over them within days, like of him being basically reunited with his crew, and he said it was nonstop media madness, and that was in the 70s, right?
Yep, it says within a few days, $5,000 best prize or prize for the best UFO case of the year.
National Enquirer gets a really shitty rap, like, historically.
You don't say.
But, however, they have released so many, they've been the scoop on, yes, they've totally flopped and had a bunch of bullshit stories.
Elvis is in Montreal, Bob. He's hanging out speaking French now. Okay.
Right, but let's look at like TMZ is the modern day National Enquirer, really, like the video version.
Is it?
Yeah.
No,
it's often been likened to them.
I think it's a spectrum, and yes, they are closer to the National Enquirer, TMZ, closer to the National Enquirer than I would say CNN, but they are not that close. Come on.
Okay, we can agree to disagree on that one, but
just like Deadspin Sports, it sounds terrible, but you know what? They got the scoop. National Enquirer, I'm still waiting for them to actually have a lizard princess actually, produce one. I'm
Right.
just saying.
But they've had scoops. I mean, they have. So, as has TMZ.
Blind
as
squirrel
has
finds an
Deadspin.
acorn every now and then.
Yes. But I guess for me, in the full spectrum of experience, since we're coming up on that magical, mystical hour time, for me, I think if you take each one of these things individually, yes, like it's difficult. Is there a crazy guy in the Navy that's patenting shit just to patent shit? Is Bob Lazar just doing an elongated book tour for the end part of his life? Is Travis doing the same thing? But when you start to snap the pieces together, it becomes much more compelling when a guy that, has been talking about these types of fusion drives since the end, or since, Area 51 became a thing. And then now you've got a guy in the Navy that's patenting something that sounds very similar and ties to the tic-tac, in the water, out of the water. It just all starts to net. I'm super excited to hopefully learn something new come June. That's really, I guess, long-winded what I'm trying to say.
All right. So
Kevin Wiegand, who's listening to the show right now on Facebook, says that the Weekly World News is where you go to find the truth. I'm not even familiar with that outlet.
What's their circulation? That's all I'm asking. So, okay. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying it is 2021. We've gone from the age of information to the age of misinformation. And what I'm saying is Donald Trump and his cabal of idiots have ruined the good old-fashioned conspiracy theory that seemed pretty damn harmless now. And now everybody's got a conspiracy theory about everything, and who knows anymore. All I'm saying is I would be real. And if it's a conspiracy theory and people are just making a few bucks on the side, man, it's kind of fun and innocent to me. But man, I hope you're right. I hope that I hope like there's a little green man watching our podcast right now in the radio emitted somewhere from planet Earth. That's right. I'm shouting out to the aliens right here from planet Earth. Yeah, I hope it's all good and right and they're harmless and all that. But man, oh no, humans be humans is all I'm saying. And there's plenty of people who like to believe this conspiracy stuff. And anyway, that's me.
I think there's life out there. I think it's arrogant for us to think there's not. Now, could it get to us? Has it already lived and died? Are there new civilizations on, new planetary systems that are just getting up to speed? I think that's probably the more likely thing. There's civilizations that were advanced that have probably come and gone. There's new ones rising up. Will those paths cross? I think mathematically it's just a really tough ask in the vastness of space. Is it possible? Yes. Probable? No. But boy, I want to find out that we know something beyond that.
Yes. So if I hear Elon start pitching a submarine that can not only go underwater, fly in the air, and go into outer space, I'm calling bullshit, and I'm saying, wait a second. What do you know that the rest of us don't know? And speaking of BS, I'm not so sure that the government's actually going to do anything and provide anything further. Kind of going back to the beginning of the episode with this freedom of information stuff. Though I think it's the same thing. Have you ever read, or not read, but seen the TV series Project Blue Book? I think we've talked about it before. It's on History
Channel. Yes, and I have not caught it. No, I have not.
It's a dramatization, so it's not a documentary, but it has to do with the doctor or the investigator. I forget his title. I forget his name too. That the Air Force hired basically to provide misinformation to the public, and the whole idea is
makes perfect sense.
The idea is that the more he looked into it, the more he is actually like, oh, maybe there is something to this. But the Air Force wanted him to continue to say stuff. So that's the trope. That's the story. That's the lore of mid 19th or 20th century UFO stuff, and it's worth looking at. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like X-Files light a little bit. It's kind of less creepy, more storytelling type series. But I would really like to know why any government would be like try to hide any sort of what they know. I mean, it's always like, oh, you guys can't handle the truth. Well, you're humans too. Apparently, you can handle it. Why can't we? You know, if you can handle it, I can handle it.
Kevin, they're better than us. You know that.
Well, that gets into the whole thing with like why we had big conspiracies in the last year, because people think that there's these shadowy forces out there that are conspiring against us. The only shadowy force that I'm aware of are intelligence services, CIA, KGB, you know, the Mossad, places like that. Yeah, those people do some trickery stuff. But everyone else is just a bureaucrat. They're in for a few years and they're out. You can't keep secrets. Those people are just like, yeah, no, I'll just get my retirement now. I mean, if anyone had to sign some paper that says you'll get your full retirement, pension and all, so long as you don't talk about and they give the wink and the nod, you know what we're talking about. You know?
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
Okay.
That's a whole nother episode in and of itself.
Speaking of whole other episodes, WandaVision. You asked me the other day if I was watching WandaVision. Man, I started out watching that going, what the fuck is going on here, Disney? When I watched the first episode, I'm like, really? That's your show? And then, you know, by the time episode 3, which I, you know, was convinced, somebody convinced me, oh, you should probably still watch. Now I'm hooked. Now I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
This is like Doctor Who Disney version. So.
I was actually angry that it was in 3:4 ratio or a 4:3 ratio, and then I was so relieved when it expanded out. Oh, didn't want to give any spoilers, but but yes, you should definitely watch that, and we should definitely make that a topic of conversation on the next episode. So if you've made it this far, and if you're watching live, or if you find this video somewhere on the interwebs, whether it be Periscope, Facebook Live, Twitch, or YouTube, please know that we are actually a podcast first. It's the Bob and Kevin Show, and it can be found wherever you find your podcast. The presentation is slightly different than this live show because Josh from Baty-Barr Media cleans it up for us. But pretty much what you see is what you get. So trying to go weekly. We'll see how that goes. We were successful this past 2 episodes. We are on episode 88, I believe, today. So we are coming up very quickly on 100 episodes over the course of the last nearly 3 years, or possibly over 3 years. So we're here to stay. Check us out. And Kevin, what do you want to say in conclusion today?
I think I've already kind of put a bow on all this. I'm going to be very interested in our future episode when we get something juicy to look through for this freedom of information stuff. So that's it.
Yeah, come back in June, or come back before, and we'll catch you on the next episode. We're out.
You are listening to the Bob and Kevin Show with Bob Baty-Barr and Kevin Giszewski. Each week we cover relevant tech and social issues related to technology.
Our website is bobandkevin.show,
and our episodes can be found virtually on any podcast network.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Just search for Bob and Kevin Show.